Well, good evening from Bali. My name is Mahendra Shah, a co-founder of Earth Odyssey with Yuri Sanada. This fourth webinar concerns heeding the voices of the youth for the imperative of sustainable development in the next 30 to 50 years, essentially the lifespan of the youth alive today. Each speaker is allocated 5 minutes. Please introduce yourself, your place of work, and your professional background. We have 3 questions to ponder today. What, in your opinion, is the role of youth in making our world sustainable while protecting nature? What will it take to overcome the current obstacles? And how and what will it take to empower the youth to be decision-making responsible citizens? What are the priorities and what are the needs for this? Look back from 2050 or 2070, 30 and 50 years ahead. What will your ideas and initiatives have achieved? What will remain and have changed? After the first round of statements, there will be time for further thoughts and discussion. Let me begin by framing some of the pressing issues we are facing. The task ahead in the next 30, 50 years is to empower youth as action-oriented, committed, and responsible leaders to deliver the imperative of worldwide sustainable development. This, in history, is the first time for humankind that the responsibility to make sustainable development a reality has been burdened. Our current education systems, from schools to colleges and universities, are focused on getting a degree, often a single discipline. We lack the school of life education for sustainable development issues, social, environmental, and economic, as well as negotiation skills for responsible decision-making. There has essentially been a failure to deliver the resources and the means for actions at Stockholm 1972, Rio 92, and Johannesburg 2002 summits, where most developed countries came with many on-site expert advisors who advised the main negotiator during the summit's dynamic processes and negotiation. In contrast, most developing countries lacked such a support system of advisors. Herein lies the disparity in agenda negotiations and sustainability outcomes. It is estimated that there are just 14 universities worldwide offering a bachelor's degree in lifelong learning and sustainable development. The following countries have just one university devoted to this: Finland, Latvia, Poland, Sweden, Italy, Hong Kong, Aruba, and United Kingdom with 3 universities, and the USA with 4 universities, a total of 14 universities. The UN system is ideally positioned to provide practical internships, especially interns from developing countries where the need for sustainable development is paramount, for them to succeed and expand their impact on sustainable development. Such experiences, beyond getting employment in the UN, for which many youths are striving, is critical. In the past, only about 11% of UN interns ever ended up as UN staff. And many of these tended to come from developed countries, where there are substantial other internship opportunities in governments and private sector. This is not the case in most developing countries. To be trained and mentored to be an action-oriented leader in sustainable development, we must provide first-hand local level participation in sustainable development implementation In the current decade of the Sustainable Development Goals 2030, last year, we proposed publicly and in direct communications with the UN headquarters in New York and Geneva for a youth training and mentoring program as follows. In each country, select 20 youth with a transparent open competition for a period of 3 months, 4 times a year. That means 80 interns in a year, under the supervision and guidance of UN staff, mentors, and volunteers in the field. This potentially could empower over a decade, the decade of the SDGs 2030, some 156,000 youths as in-country practical sustainable development enablers working with the local communities in the 195 countries around the world. This means 80 empowered youth in each country per year, or 800 over the period of the SDGs. Sadly, this did not receive any response from the UN headquarters in New York or Geneva. If such scaled down internships were also offered in the 15 UN specialized agencies in the field, many, many more youth can be empowered. Let me conclude that beyond the United Nations, it is time for colleges and universities around the world to introduce a course in sustainable development, a compulsory course in sustainable development in all degree courses. Only then we can create a generation of action-oriented, responsible, committed human capital essential to realize the imperative of sustainable development. The only way forward, we must do this. Finally, I would like to leave you with a food for thought. Silicon Valleys have mushroomed in every city around the world. These hubs of creativity and entrepreneurship account for the amazing progress in technology. And in many of these Silicon Valleys has countless interns who work with the experts and the investors. Why not similarly create sustainability valleys around the world, bringing together the practitioners of sustainable development and youth interns? And that is the challenge for us and an entry point to train the youth of tomorrow as leaders and decision makers. I stop there, and I now call upon Aram.
Mahendra, let me just intervene there, because I think it's a great pleasure to hear about these ideas. So my background is from Youth for Planet, and we are just trying to do that in a different way, because the UN is not taking care of these young people, like Mahendra said, in the right way, in the right manner. So I'm in discussion with the World Bank, who is currently doing exactly that. They are supporting young leadership development, and they have asked us to support this with our methods in order to empower them to do better storytelling and story listening. So something's happening there, but it's not enough, of course, and it's not coming from the right people. It's not from the government. It's not in schools, in universities. Only very few universities offer these courses. I think we will hear some of this later. So what we are trying to set up is a system of learning and empowering devices around the planet that allow for this local and global learning at the same time. I will come to that later. We're currently working in order to develop these creative fellows in such a way that they are widely available globally as these learning devices, and they're media bikes that you can use to go out and into the field and communicate with people and do research and learn and present at the same time. So this was my little speech for as an introduction. We will not have somebody from Youth for Planet here except me at the moment because everybody was busy there. So we can now just begin. And so Mahendra, you were probably saying you wanted to ask Helena to say.
Well, I'm
something.
from Youth for Planet, and maybe I speak first.
Yeah.
You see, this work got us together here in organizing this, and I'm from Berlin and elsewhere. I'm an in-betweener. I'm non-aligned, not like states. I'm non-aligned, but I'm associated with various youth organizations and civic activities like Youth for Planet. And my vocational training is my special focus, doing also youth festivals, citizen sciences, film and model making activities. So the role of the youth is a very sensitive one, because can we learn and lead at the same time? Our experience is rotation and doing intergenerational, that we learn from the old and the old learn from the young. So develop a mentorship in both ways and do flexible group dialogues and group formation. And I think it is the empowering of our faculties and sense making, our ways to express how our aesthetic approaches, to really go to what humans can do, which is abstract thinking, observing, repeating, changing, and using imagination and co-creation for doing and learning from it. And what it takes, I think it's an overall approach that it takes women, takes youth, it takes family. And I experienced that in ECOSOC, that's a part of the UN for the NGOs, for the civil society, all these powers, they are underfinanced. So the nations have the overload, and as Mahendra just said, maybe they delegate their kins and not doing something what is needed, which is at least a G77. And we have to go in our new thinking to go beyond this me and we to they and those and others. And so when looking back, which was the third question, when maybe 20, 30 years ago, I think we have, when we follow my ideas, a chance to overcome this oversimplistic, nominalistic, dualistic thinking and doing, and not communicating really as a commune with a common, and be able in such a way to address our mind bugs and blind spots. So if we become aware of leverage points and see exactly where the other is, then I feel there is a chance, like the order schemas and cosmologies of the traditional people, that we expand our horizons, our scope, and do it in many ways, because there is no panacea, probably all of you will agree upon. So the traditions have developed order schemas like the wheel, like the knowledge spiral cosmologies, or give you an example out of history, the disk of Nebra, maybe 5,000 years ago, was a worldview revolution. So just talking about expanding our awareness and consciousness is not enough. So I think when we approach this, we will be system and model thinkers and doers, and we are part of community and not of the tribe of the Ego, with all the captains and no Indians or sailors. So thank you very much. I don't know if I was in time.
Thank you, Einar. Yuri, I am going to give you the floor towards the end. If you don't mind, we need to listen to the youths now. Ms.
Sure.
Fernandez, you have the floor.
Hi, my name is Elena Fernandez. I'm 17. I'm from Rio de Janeiro. And aside from being a student, I'm a life science researcher, intern from the Innovation Lab from the Public Ministry of Rio de Janeiro State. I'm an activist, UNICEF volunteer. This goes on, but I wanted to focus in the past few weeks, which I had the opportunity to attend this course at Harvard University about the economics of the environment and exchange some ideas with people from all around the world about the challenges we have been facing. I think this speech will be mostly directed to the youth. And interestingly, in one of our discussions in this course, we commented on how nowadays the youth seems to know much more about the environmental issues, global warming, but engagement on the topic is still challenging. So I think this also leads to the theme of this webinar, right? The 2022-2052 challenges of mentoring youth as leaders for sustainable development. So the question I asked, it's how can we educate and raise the youth to be environmental activists, being genuinely concerned with the future of the natural world and generations to come, right? And I became truly fascinated with this question when in 2015, more or less, there was this dam failure in Mariana, which is a city in Minas Gerais, Brazil. And sure, I remember studying at school the importance of recycling, how pollution was bad, but that dam burst was the moment when I understood quite clearly what an environmental disaster was quite close from my home. So the mine waste basically contaminated nearby rivers, the soil, covered all the city with mud. Families suffered with the lack of water, soil, and fertility. And I remember, how can I act based on the situation? And I think it was when we understood the importance of acting as a community. And I remember volunteering, helping on this campaign, distributing water, and that helped the families affected by the tragedy. And it's just, I couldn't believe that something like this could happen. And then I became more alert about environmental problems and saw how a lot of them were happening nearby, especially in Brazil. So just to bring some data here about my country, 20% of the original vegetation from the Amazon forest has been removed so far. In 2017, there was this fire in the Chapada dos Veadeiros that destroyed 75,000 hectares of land. In 2019, there was an oil spill that covered an area of 4,000 kilometers squared. And in 2020, about 28% of Pantanal was in fire, meaning that approximately 4.2 million hectares of the biome was burned. These numbers are quite striking, and they denounced that much needs to be done in the sense that for these issues not to happen anymore. But the problem with statistics is that they always seem a little abstract, especially for young people. So although we sometimes have access to this data, we don't quite understand what is happening and kind of the urgency to act, right? So, but if the Amazon forest continues to be deforested, it will reach a point that the ecosystem will turn into a savanna. So this isn't a distant future that we are talking about. This is the reality that we need to be concerned at the moment. And I just want to say to all the young people watching this, start paying attention to what is happening to your community now. How many families have been affected by landslides? What about droughts, fires, water crisis? And that local park that was turned into a parking lot. Do you see animals eating plastic or other types of trash? When you go to the beach, how many straws or other waste do you see in the sand or water? So sure, environmental issues many times require big actions from our government and our international organizations, but it's also our role as young people to identify these pressing problems, demand that our politicians are acting on the matter, and even contribute with individual actions. So promoting sustainable campaigns, going vegan, cutting down our waste, doing beach cleanups can be nice ways to engage on these environmental matters. And also, joining organizations focused on promoting sustainable development. I think sometimes, yes, individual actions are important, but we need to act as a community. And these organizations can be a great way of becoming an environmental leader, becoming engaged with sustainable development. So, for instance, I became a youth leader from Mulheres do Brasil. I've had the opportunity to talk to multiple activists and founders of sustainable initiatives. Moreover, they have this amazing network. So I'm part of this NGO that distributes pads to people who menstruate from low-income communities. And he had the opportunity to partnership with big Brazilian brands, Cantão and Ciclo, and we raised 3,000 eco pads, which can be used for 3 years. So it's a very big impact. And it was only possible because I was part of this, because I'm a leader of Mulheres do Brasil, and I think also being a volunteer from UNICEF, I can get the support and also talk to other youth, other young people that are also as passionate as me to do something about what is happening. And just to conclude, basically, after 30 years of Rio Echo 92, there's still much to be done for sustainable development. And in this way, I invite all the young people listening to this talk to think about who we want to be in this process, in this fight. Take this moment to think about how you can positively impact your community, promote campaigns, connect with others to press your government to be committed to the sustainable development agenda. It's about time that we stop repeating the same mistakes from the past and start engaging in the fight for the environment and well-being of nature and future generations now. So that's it, basically.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Wow.
Since South America in the past was connected to Africa, that's where we now go. David, you have the floor.
David Luganda is my name. I'm from Uganda. I am the team lead of Africa Farmers Media Center, and I'm also a journalist. I've been working with the media and also the youth in Uganda and in East Africa. What I see the role of the youth and to see on how they can come on board is that we have to understand that Agenda 2030 is less than 9 years to end. But as youth, we have to make sure that we avail ourselves. Some of the issues the youth have to know that availing yourself and being available at any time is very critical. And also doing your research, because now it's on you yourself in order to protect your environment and also take up self-initiatives to understand that the world is facing a number of challenges. Case in point, in our region, the Horn of Africa, we have experienced one of the toughest droughts in Somalia, Kenya, and Ethiopia, and also famine, coupled with high prices of commodities. But as youth, we have to come up with solutions, not complaining. And we find that we can involve ourselves in agriculture and also not directly in the garden, but on the value chain. For example, marketing, creating different applications which can enable us so that the prices for the food can reach to other areas. And to see some of the issues that what are some of the obstacles which are hindering the youth from achieving this? This may be, we see connectivity is not reaching most of the areas, mainly the rural areas in my country and also in African countries. But for that, I normally engage the youth and tell them that it's high time, in case your village is not connecting, in case you have an activity you want to be online, you can move to another area which has internet or which has network. Another issue is to avail themselves to volunteer their time, so that you can volunteer your time and resources to do an online course to engage yourself to understand restoration, what is climate change, what is climate action, what is net zero, so that in the end, you become a guru in your community and also train others. In case you have internet, you can also provide short videos which can post on internet, social media like Facebook, Twitter, so that also other youth can be the change agents in where they live. So we see that in 20 to 30 years to come, we are seeing Agenda 2030, Agenda 2063. The youth who are agitating for climate action, they will be like 60, 50 years, and they will be the older people. So normally I tell them that youth is just age or number, but you have to be youthful when you provide ideas which will protect you in the future. So I see that we have to come up with a number of initiatives in our universities which will be sustainable and also mentor other fellow youth to come up and they take up these initiatives. For example, in universities, in colleges, at work, because when you come back as a mentor, you see what you created moving on well and also enabling other people to transform their communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Africa is
Thank you, David.
the greatest challenge for sustainable development for us. And you as a journalist in the media have a specific responsibility to mobilize the citizens to take the future in their hands. So very much appreciate what you're doing. Next, we move to the next connecting continent. It's Asia, and I call on Keshini. You have the floor.
Thanks, Dad. Thank you, everybody. So I'm Keshini, Mahendra's daughter. By background, I'm a lawyer with a specialization in international law, but for the last 7 years, my work has still been on the strategy side, but with a main focus on development impact. So work in Asia and largely, in fact, Africa as well. So all the way from improved youth outcomes to gender equity, inclusiveness, financial inclusion, impact investing, and all the rest of it. So I think I come, having listened to all of you, not only what you say resonates quite strongly, I will caveat by saying you guys, I think, are coming at it from a much more on the ground lens. What I'm about to say probably comes more from the lens of a stakeholder or a government or a investor in this space. So it definitely resonates, but do bear with me if I come across as slightly coming in from a different angle. So I think for me and in all the work I've done, there is a grassroots level issue, and I think that is extremely important to understand before we start talking about which pathway, whether that's sustainability or it's improved outcomes or it's anything else, right? And the fact at the moment is in developing markets in particular, the youth are disempowered, disenfranchised for many, many different reasons, right? So just, one statistic, youth account for approximately 60% of Africa's unemployment, right? That's a very real, it's a very up-to-date figure, and it's a very true figure. And so, I'm a strong believer in saying, unless you actually look at it from the perspective of somebody who does not have access to a job or improved, economy or improved outcomes, it's very difficult to sort of convince a person in that type of environment to say, well, hey, can you care about X cause, and can you care about this, and can you care about your community? All of which is fundamentally true. And so the way I'm thinking about it is at a fundamental and at a basic level, there is a need sort out our education systems, right? We are very academically focused in the developing world. Our youth are coming out of academic programs with some level of skills, but they're certainly not ready to work skills. They're definitely not ready to community serve skills. And they are far from the skills talking about, pathways towards the SDGs, right? So let's go back to basics and think about that, right? At the same time, there are constraints in the education sector, right? Like these governments and policymakers don't have infinite budgets. And quite frankly, the developed world hasn't exactly got it right either. So in terms of best practices, there aren't very many. The other lens that I'd like to add into this conversation is youth are not homogenous, right? They're just not, right? And so when we talk about youth and we define them by age, we really are missing a trick or two. We are, the gender lens is the one that's most often quoted, but we're living in a climate of not just natural disaster, it's actually real human conflict leading to displacement, increasing urbanization, which has a direct impact both on the levels of air pollution and climate change within these metro cities, but also the health and economic impact of all of those things, right? So it's a double-edged sword. We're not really, there's very little debate around refugees, youth refugees, right? Disabled, differently abled youth. What are we going to do about them? Because when we talk about improved outcomes, that lens is absolutely necessary, right? So opportunities in rural areas are lacking, apart from agricultural subsistence. There's displacement, there's climate change, there's human conflict, all of that leads to displacement. Increasing number of youth are migrating to urban centers where there are just not enough jobs, right? There's not enough opportunities. So what can we tangibly do? There's definitely a requirement for programming in terms of embedding quality skilling through education, through employment, whether that's internships, whether that's access to labor markets for experience, etc. There are many youth-focused programs already in existence today. Most of them lack pathways to scale. So let's understand what is working on the ground, what have we learned, how do we scale, right? It can be beyond segments, it can be beyond geographies, it could be beyond just metro, sort of urban versus rural, but we need to find a way of scaling these programs. We've got to take an enhanced approach to inclusion, right? Like we can't talk about youth as a homogenous segment anymore. It doesn't exist. Entrepreneurship. There is no way that we're creating the number of jobs for the number of youth we have, and they're growing, right? So what do we need to do? We don't just have to get them jobs, we actually have to create entrepreneurial mindsets very early, access to opportunities. And this is where the climate impact and the pathways to the SDGs come in. Youth are brilliant at ideas generation. They just don't have the support either from their communities or from systemic interventions that allow them to generate their big ideas into tangible opportunities, right? And then, of course, we're all living in a digital world. We need to start using gig economy platforms, digital platforms to create market linkages for youth in particular. Again, that may be access to jobs, it may be access to networks, it may just be access to conversations that facilitate an entire movement that catalyzes this, right? Without those things, we are still going to take a siloed approach, and it's not going to be effective if we're going to start talking about sustainability, SDGs, climate change, and all the rest of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for putting out the entrepreneurship issue, which is so important in creating these sustainability valleys. Armahini, we now move to Southeast Asia, to an artist and a change maker. Armahini, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
The floor, you have the floor. Introduce yourself.
I'm Arahmayani. I'm an artist, a writer, and also activist, social and environmental activist. And I'm also a lecturer at Passau University in Germany. Well, talking about youth, young people, I've been working with this group of activists mostly, but of course also with my students, especially doing something that has to do with this environmental challenges. And we are not limiting ourselves to theory only, but emphasizing on action. So I've been working in Yogyakarta, where I'm based in Indonesia, and also Bali with the community of young people. But then, of course, yeah, I'm not young, right? And I have some friends also, they're not young, who are also concerned and helping or working together with the young people. So what Heiner mentioned earlier about intergenerational kind of, activity, I think that's what is needed, actually. And I have been working also abroad, outside Indonesia. Yeah, of course, in Passau, in Bavaria area, working with local community as well, besides my students. But I've been working also in Tibet Plateau for a long time, more than 10 years now, trying to save the balance of ecology, because Tibet Plateau is very significant area in ecological context, right? Regionally as well as globally, because it's known as the third pole and Asia water tower. Anyway, the project after first 5 years not being supported by anyone, but by only the Tibetan. After 5 years, the Chinese government approved and support the project until today. So this is a good, successful kind of example of a project, and also intergenerational for sure. And then also I have been doing this kind of community-based kind of project in other places, like Palestine and Israel. Although last 2 years I was supposed to go there, but of course cannot because of the pandemic. But this is also limited to just group of women. Sorry to say this, because in reality, the men from both sides, a lot of them are very heroic, and they just want to fight with each other all the time. And the woman has different idea from both sides. They want to build a new, better future for their children. So yeah, I've been working there as well. And the coming project, actually, last year, I was in Netherlands also. I was invited by Rietveld Academy, Willem de Kooning Academy, and Leiden University. And the impact is really good, because the students, the young people, they want to work with the young people that I have been working with in Indonesia as well as in Germany. But they also would like to know young people from the other places. Actually, end of this month, I'm going to Turkey, to Istanbul, and I'm going to work also with especially young people there. And yeah, we'll do the work focus on environment. And then in October, November, I will be working with the community in Patani in Thailand, the Muslim minority, but in contact and dialogue with the Buddhist majority. And this will be also focusing on environment, but with the so-called interdisciplinary approach. So we could bring up any issues basically. Yeah. So actually, I was supposed to go also to Canada to work with the indigenous group in Victoria Island, but because of the pandemic, so it has been somehow postponed, and we will wait until it's possible. But we have been doing this online so far to stimulate innovative and creative idea for the problems they have to deal with. And yeah, this is also similar with the group, female group from Israel and Palestine. We just do it online so far. Yeah, so I have a good news actually from my base in Indonesia. So maybe Dr. Mahendra know these people. So now I got the support from the royal family. And in Yogyakarta, they are, of course, very important because when they support a project and people will be really becoming energetic, you know. So this is a good news from Yogyakarta. Okay, so my what I want to say is about educating, but also in a way, you know, doing action. This is very important because if we just talking only, this is difficult, to realize the dream. Okay, so maybe
Thank you.
Well, I would be interested to know more about what you have achieved when you when you're looking back with all your work. What did
okay. Yeah, for example, well, I already mentioned one of the example of the successful project is the one in Tibet Plateau. Yeah, I started working there in 2010 and still ongoing until now. As I mentioned earlier, on the 5th year, the Chinese government approved and support the project. But before that, I was allowed to work up in the plateau with the Tibetan, but we were not allowed to get any support and funding from outside. But luckily, the monastic group, the monks especially, and the lamas, the leader of the monastic group, they are very supportive. And also, I don't know, maybe it has to do also with the background of the connection between Tibet and Indonesia. I don't know if you know the past history of the Borobudur period, you know, the Hindu-Buddha period in Indonesia has this monastery, and actually the tradition was brought to Tibet by an Indian monk named Atisa Dipankara Srijanana about 1,000 years ago. But fortunately, the Tibetan monastic group, they have all the document and they still practicing. Well, Indonesian maybe already forgotten most of them, which is a bit sad. Well, but it has to do also with the role of the colonialists, of course. But anyway, we'll talk about that later.
Thank you, Arun.
So we have achieved a lot of work to preserve the balance of ecology up there. Like we are doing planting trees, and now almost 2 million trees has been planted up there, so we can preserve the water. Because I mentioned it's Asia water tower, all the big rivers in Asia continent headwaters are in the Tibet Plateau. And if by climate change, if we don't do anything up there, you know, experts predict by 2030, the water, the headwater will be dried up, which is a catastrophe for everybody in Asia continent, I guess. And then, we revive organic farming, nomadic culture and lifestyle, and of course, managing the water, because it's the source of water, right? And also creating alternative energy. So this example of a successful project, and I hope it can inspire others. Thank you.
Mahini, thank you. I have followed your regenerative agriculture project here in Indonesia, which is very important for Africa. But let me say that we need you as an ambassador for Earth Odyssey. With all the projects beyond art that you're doing, you're using art to bring development into all these locations. So thank you so much. So now the discussion is open, and I suggest each one of us who wishes to speak has 3 minutes to make a statement, and then we can have another round. Yuri, do you wish to add anything?
No, just say thank you for participating. As usual, it's great to have you here. What you're saying is going to be into the documentary. And just say that we really need some new ideas, new blood into this world leadership. We have now in Brazil the elections this year, October, and it's between two dinosaurs that just fighting for old ideas, not really helping. But unfortunately, we don't have young people there with new ideas, fresh ideas that can really help change the game. So we need more young, fresh blood into the politics and into the efforts to help us save this planet. Thank you.
Well, on that note, pull Helena into the system, into the Earth Odyssey system. Helena, you finish your Harvard course and you join us. So now the floor is open. Who wants to have a word? I would prefer if some of the youth speak up.
Hi. Yes, we are in election year, so it's definitely you feel that maybe stuff will change, but as Yuri said, it's between two people who hasn't exactly focused that much on youth, so it's kind of like frustrating at the same time. But there are some initiatives happening in Brazil. So you mentioned, for instance, about building these valleys of innovation, right? But connected to sustainability. And what is happening now, it's that Brazil, especially the Amazon forest region, some researchers from MIT, USP, which is university in Brazil, they are trying to create this innovation valley in the Amazon forest and having this ecosystem that merges entrepreneurship, sustainable development, and some other eco initiatives in the region. So it can both build connections with like families and communities living there, but also invest in bioenergy and promote the sustainable development. So it's a very nice initiative to look up to, and maybe it will be interesting if we can also expand this to other countries and even develop it further in Brazil, because it's starting now.
Thank you. Thank you, Helena. A 17-year-old boy from Brazil changed the history and the future of football. So the young people of Brazil can be the Pelés of this world to change for development. David, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. We have to understand that we are living in a different context and environment. Actually, if we see that here in Africa, we are in agriculture, and it's high time we take up value chain and value addition, mainly training the youth on how they can engage on value addition. And this will enable us not to degrade our environment, because due to the value chain, many people will engage and also employment will be created. As we do that, it's better we tell our story in order so that other people can also copy from us and understand what's going on in case we are having any initiative on plastics, value addition, using solar irrigation, which is renewable energy. It's better one tells his story, use social media as a tool to learn, relearn, and also retooling our skills so that we have a better future and also inform the youth who can also make informed decisions using the available information. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Can you comment, David, because in Kampala, Nairobi, Lagos, you have Silicon Valleys, which are thriving. Do you think there is scope for sustainability valleys to bring the practitioners of sustainable development together with young people? David.
You are actually, as youth, we have to be the Silicon Valley, because we have to create that in our area we are living. Case in point on the work I'm doing, I'm training over 40 village saving allowance association on value addition using solar energy to dry their crops. So this means that as we co-create around these solutions of solar dryer, briquettes making, it means that we are providing skills for the rural women and also youth. Hence, this in future will create a Silicon Valley, which everyone can come to and also understand. And also, in future, we can add on the ICT part of it so that this can be scaled out to other areas, and also the value chain can be improved. So the Silicon Valley can come in Africa, and it's already happening, but it's a matter of documenting and also having our own context, because we have the way how we can understand it, and also make sure that everyone is incorporated, the women, the youth, the old, the women, and also the rural population mainly, which conducts agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you. Keshini. Keshini, come in.
Yes, I'm here, Dad. Yeah, I think, I mean, it's kind of, this has been a great discussion, and yeah, the closing remarks again resonate. For me, I mentioned this earlier, right? Like, we definitely need to intervene. We need to, I think even before we intervene, we need to identify. There is a need for collectivization. There's a need to kind of understand the different needs and challenges across the spectrum. There's a need to create and maybe even get on the same level platform of awareness of the pathways that exist, particularly when we start talking about sustainability. What do we actually mean by that? So employment, entrepreneurship, is there a way to sort of catalyze sustainable employment and sustainable entrepreneurship, and actually even facilitate more and more youth to come into real kind of global programs that we have on climate change? Why do we not have a greater level of youth representation in this space? Particularly because, you know, my dad says it all the time. We've borrowed the future. What have we borrowed the future from our children? Something along those lines. So then we should be involving the youth. I can no longer claim, my dad still thinks I'm youth. I am no longer classified as youth. But you know, as a parent, it's an important conversation. I have two very young children that aren't going to be young for much longer. I see them, I hope for them to be change makers, not only for them to have a better future, but for them actually to be the drivers of change. I can do what I can in my little four walls, but you know, the dialogue has to go beyond my home. It has to go beyond my family. It has to go beyond my work. And for me, the key question is, how do we catalyze that as the first step before we even start thinking about pathways? Let's find a common ground, and let's mobilize and let's catalyze this dialogue and involve youth in the dialogue. We hear it all the time. We cannot bring gender equity unless we include men. We cannot empower youth and drive a future unless we include the voice of youth. It's as simple as that. So let's do that, and let's do that as the first sort of programmatic intervention, if you like, or catalyst, as a key next step.
Thank you, Keshi. I would like you to say something, because the biggest slum in the world is in Mumbai, and you live in Mumbai. And when I have visited this slum, the youth in this slum not only are entrepreneurs, they are working hard, and they are change makers, especially in sustainability. Can you tell us something about the slum and how the youth there refuse to leave the slum because they are so happy in it, with their creativity and contributing to the economy?
So just the point, we're the second biggest slum in the world, not the first. The first is Brazil. But yeah, we're big enough. That's a really tough question to answer, Dad, because I don't know. I mean, yes, they're economically there. They choose to. I mean, it's hard to measure to what extent are they making an empowered choice to continue living there versus continuing a legacy. And the Indian culture, which is very similar to cultures in many other countries, is one of kinship and families, right? And so, yes, we have Dharavi, the second biggest slum in the world, certainly the biggest in Asia by far, has massive empowerment of industries, right? Like huge growth of industries, the leather factories, even sort of services stem from Dharavi. But it is hard to say to what extent. I mean, the youth are certainly empowered. Their businesses are growing and flourishing, but technological disruption is coming in, right? So even from a geographic perspective, all slums are always under threat of infrastructure development in the end, right? They still don't, a lot of the slum dwellers in Dharavi still don't have access to basic sanitation. Having said that, for example, during COVID, it was the youth that mobilized, which meant that COVID had minimal impact, either in terms of disease spread or virus spread rather, and lives lost in Dharavi. And that for me was shocking. And what happened was the government mobilized the youth, right, in the slum. So they were the ones that were going out there, talking to people, creating awareness, doing the vaccination drives, doing the COVID testing. And Dharavi, it was an absolute shock, I think, to the whole country, if not to the world, that Dharavi hadn't succumbed to the COVID virus. You're talking about 20 people living in less than 200 square feet. How did the virus not spread? So, there are two ways. There's economic empowerment where they're joining existing industries. There's also mobilizing these youth because they have a very strong voice in their communities. Dharavi is a massive community. There is an opportunity and an urgent need to actually mobilize them in an effective way. So both sides, yes, it works and they're there. But again, the more you give youth power, opportunity, the more engaged they are.
But this is so important because the governments of developing countries in their negotiations at the global level have failed to make any progress at the three world summits. And here is Mahini and also Ms. Fernandez giving us examples of youth empowerment as the catalyst of change. And I think we should take this message because the youth in Europe and the United States are marching for climate change, for this, for that. They go to the World Bank demonstrations, to the UN demonstrations. But on the ground, this example of the pandemic in Dharavi is a beautiful example to share with the world that what really happened, and it was the youth who managed to save the amazingly large population of Dharavi. So these are excellent examples. Armahini, you have been around, but your example of Tibet is fascinating. But at the same time, remember that Tibet, Bhutan, etc., and the situation with China, and the question is, where will it all lead to? And that's really a hard question. But at the same time, the Buddhist religion gives the power to the Tibetans to continue with all the hostilities and everything they face to make progress in life. How are the youth in Tibet? Are they as powered and empowered and willing to take step forward beyond the monks? But of course, everybody has to be a monk in Tibet at some stage in their life.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, when I came in 2010, a lot of young people or youth, they moved to the city, to the Chinese city. They have a dream of becoming successful, is, going to the city and making a lot of money, but in reality, they just become a worker in a factory, most of them. Anyway, when we started this project of reviving, organic farming and nomadic culture, managing the water, I forget to mention something, also managing the trash and recycle it, and creating alternative energy. They returned to the village. Happily, I was so happy to see. And then when they experience, how they can now produce their own food, their own energy, actually they talk to me like, hey, Yanni, if you can produce our own food and our own energy, meaning we are independent, right? And I said, yes, but just keep it for yourself and just do it. No need to scream. Yeah, so that's what happened. And lots of them now going back and live again in a nomadic lifestyle and producing their own food and managing the water, trash, and creating energy, alternative energy. That's what they have been doing. And they are very happy because they understood that, their life is much better actually. And they say, oh, now we can consume healthy food and good, that's what happened. Talking about Tibet in relation to Indonesia, of course, right? Because I mentioned earlier that the monastic culture is actually coming from my country. But there's a good news now. There are more and more young people, and especially this group of expert of culture from the royal house. They are now also interested in re-studying this forgotten cultural heritage. That's one of the reasons why I got this support in Yogyakarta nowadays. And another new kind of project with a new approach is, for example, there's now a project, a long-term project in Yogyakarta on recycling trash. And this is supported by, say, local government, but also by Goethe Institute and Ministry of Foreign Affairs from Germany. Last month, the president of Germany came to Yogyakarta, actually, to meet the group that I work with, especially young people. And this is really exciting for them, of course. Yeah, because it is a long-term kind of project. So there's a kind of guarantee that it will, developing further. Another good news is about, I was being invited since last year to join the conference, global conference, organized by the so-called organization called Odyssey, also led by a German scholar named Frank Jürgens Reichter. And they going last year. They have a conference, but of course it was online, where they invite, besides artists and activists, mostly actually world political leaders and businessmen. And the coming conference will be taking place in Japan in November. And there will be 300 world leaders, political leaders and businessmen joining this. But they, of course, invite artists because they said that we need also input, creative input from artists and activists. Yeah, and actually next year, the conference will be held in Bali.
Thank you. Armahini, let's not forget our conversation that when I met the Sultan, he wanted very much to make Jogja the center of holistic wellness and sustainable lifestyles. And you need to revive that, because Jogja can be the first Bali, because Indonesia has plans for 5 Balis and Jogja has the greatest potential, and especially with the Borobudur and the Hindu temple there. So let us meet soon and we will discuss.
Yes, sure.
Where are you? Okay, David, are you still here? Two participants raised hands. Who raised your hand?
I believe me and Dr. Banking. Yeah.
So anyway, David, you have the floor. David?
Yes, please.
You have the floor. You may speak.
No,
David?
let another one take up my time, because that. Hello.
Yes,
Hello?
yes. Go ahead, David.
Hello.
We can
Hello,
hear.
maybe you can repeat the question so that I can go on.
No, from the discussion we just had, that it appears all the developing countries from which the youth have been speaking, there is so much energy and passion in the youth in what they are doing in this country, be it Brazil, be it India, be it Uganda, and be it Indonesia. And we have to have a system where our government and business delegations that go to international forums to discuss, and they don't have enough experts and advisors to take. The real opportunity is to take the youth with their passion and let their voices be heard in the international arena for change. And I think partnership between the youth in the developing countries and youth in the developed countries would be an amazing way to move forward instead of these separate entities. You know, we had Severin Suzuki speaking at the Rio 92, and now we have Greta Thunberg, and we failed to see so many active voices from the developing countries, so many capable youth, and they are never in the World Forum to present. And the simple reason for this, because I've been in part of that system, is our governments do not propose our youth to speak in that forum, because you cannot speak in that forum unless your government proposes. And that's what happened with Severin Suzuki, with Canada asking, and the same with Greta, Sweden asking for that possibility. Jörg, we asked for you. You wish to say something?
Well, I sent out this invitation with a certain angle, because I think that not much is really done. You said, okay, the governments need to invite, governments have to do this and that. Governments will never do that because they seem to hate young people. They seem to neglect them. So when we had the pandemic here in Germany, the youth was not taken seriously. No one asked them what they want when there was a lockdown in schools. They are not existent in many ways. So I find it very difficult to make the switch, because the schools that exist in most countries are training and filling them up with information. And the information is sometimes outdated already when it comes to them. So then they are not trained to act upon reality. And this is frustrating for them. So today we just had a web seminar with 50 young people between 11 and 14. And they are so open, they are so ready to act, and they are so positive about their opportunities that I cannot possibly understand why nobody is really creating youth cycles, question groups, creativity teams, like the sustainability valley you proposed, including these very young people that have an open heart and that are very sort of like-minded in many ways. So they are really concerned about the main topics on this planet. They take part. They are participating in this information realm. They listen to news, and still nobody's discussing with them what is in the news, what is really relevant to them. So today we have this issue of the war. So we had 12 people out of these 50 decided to make films about the war in Ukraine or in general. So they are really concerned about the state of this planet, and still they lack the information and they lack the training to really get into action. This is something that I think, of course, when I see Helena speaking here, then this is, of course, something there are really good examples of people that really come forward with something, but they have a certain inner drive. But in order to make this happen, this is what I said in the beginning, you need to establish a system that is systemically helping young people to participate and raise their voice on these topics that are concerning their future. And systemically, I mean, it should be part of their training, part of their education, part of what they can decide to do, what they want to learn. And this is really difficult because all the teachers' institutions, the learning institutions that we have in existence, they are trained to command, do top-down training, control, divide and conquer these young minds. And so they are not trained to be open and creative as they could be. And I think there's a big lack, and it sounds like a very general accusation, but I think we can do something about it. Once people in governments, in communities really understand the issue, and what it will take is you have to do something on the community level, because if the communities understand the value of young people in their schools, for example, the potential of them to rejuvenate life in a city, in a place, in a village, with their ideas and their creativity, then this would sort of trigger change. So the big issue is, how can you make people aware of this potential? now it's not about complaining as such, but it's now everybody is. I've been in so many discussions. Everybody is talking about this, but nothing really happens, so there's a huge gap, reality gap, and we need to fill this up towards the upcoming COP27, and see that we create a coalition of young people's organizations in order to demand a change in this system. Not only there, but in other places as well.
But you know, there is a critical case for us adults, professionals, who are also not mentoring the youth. The youth are marching for 1.5 degrees. And I asked a number of youths in Europe, what does 1.5 degrees mean and why are you marching? And they didn't know the answer to that. But then you have Eskali Chibeze in Ghana, who decided that I don't want coal mines in my country, and he marched with the children of Ghana, the youth of Ghana, and the president stopped the coal mine. So the youth of today, most of them at the age of 18 have the vote, and they have such power with this vote. You can change governments the same way as women, if they mobilize their votes, the youth have that power. And that is where we adults need to be advising, mentoring, empowering youth, that these are the areas where you can be directly active on a particular point. Don't march for climate change, but march for a climate issue that is easier to handle. And that is our responsibility, professionals. That's our responsibility to do, not our government.
I totally agree. We have the largest Fridays for Future movement in Germany, and they now went into these coal mines and they blocked everything, and so there was really a huge movement there before COVID, and very effective in terms of really blocking production, but they didn't succeed eventually because everything was so regulated and then nobody took them seriously. Nobody asked them, public television didn't ask them, why are you doing this? There were some films about it, but in the public, they were just a nuisance. They were just irritating politics and not really taken as a constructive element. And I think this has to do with the powers to be. They it's controlled, but and not allowed to be open for young people. And the way to do that is really make small changes in education and open up schools for new ideas and open up universities for new ideas. You can't wait for these institutions to really change, but there should be something on the periphery that allows them to to run courses outside the normal structures, and then it may change. So that's what we are proposing right now. We're trying to organize cooperations between organizations that are trying to do that. And at the moment, we already have 300 schools in Germany that are opting for a so-called free day, which is a day where young people actually choose the subject they want to learn, and how they integrate all the different subjects into their learning, and then they ask their teachers to support them. They become learning advisors rather than teachers, and there's something going on, but it's very slow.
Yuri, I see your hand. Yuri, you wanted to say something? Yuri?
No. I think Elena and Heiner, they are waiting in line.
Okay. Helena.
Hi, first of all, doctors, thanks for the amazing comments and speeches. I would just like to add that as it has been said many times, politicians or like governments and organizations, they come already with this very like solid speech about what needs to be done, and they lack like listening to us and to us youth. So what happens is that maybe they have a solution, but not to the real issue that it's actually like impacting our society. And just to add also on an example, because we were commenting on youth mobilization and some of the successes that we've been have. And in Brazil, the topic in the discussion about menstrual poverty became really recent and very connected to the youth mobilizing. So a lot of girl love clubs, which are connected to the UN, they've been bringing up the discussions, and we've been able to pass laws to distribute menstrual pads to people who menstruate in the country due to this opportunity, due to this forward that has been conceded to youth people, to young people. So it's definitely very important that the youth get access to our national legislative assemblies, to the Congress, to any political sphere, because it's not common for us to have this access. So I think it also brings a new lenses to the talk, because puberty, menstruation has been happening for like very long, and still we hadn't been talking about these issues about menstrual poverty. But when you give the space for the youth to talk, we then can make our points and make and propose solutions to the actual problems that are happening. So definitely, I believe there should be more spaces for us to talk about what is happening, to really put forward what we've been seeing so far. And we need to have these open channels, which are non-existent at the moment.
Thank you, Elena. Emmanuel Wamlawa, you have joined us. You have the floor. Please introduce yourself. Emmanuel.
Okay, thank you for giving me the floor. I am coming from Nairobi, Kenya, and I'm now still getting the way the flow is running. Though as youths, we have a very big role to play on matters what concern the future. Because as of now, we are the next people to take the center stage for leadership. And therefore, our leaders equally have a very big part to play and help us with the resources, giving us opportunities, giving a listening ear to what we suggest. And if they do so, I think things are going to run out well in the next 10 years from now, in the next 20 years, 30 years from now. So I believe that given more time, when the youth are given more time to share their thoughts on matters climate, not only climate, but other things that contribute to sustainable development, then I think they can do a very big job, because they're the first people who are going to be affected by that. When you look at the elderly in the society, what they generally have is this I call the institution mental mapping. They know how the institution runs. But now the people who have the ideas are the youth. But now most of the time we learn that we are limited with these opportunities, and a few are given. And most of the time our leaders fail us to some extent. Thank you.
Asante sana Wamlawa, mimi naelewa Nairobi. Nilikuwa naiko mingi. So very happy that you from
tutakutana baada ya hii. We shall engage privately about this. Thank you.
We are very happy you have joined us. And because Kenya with Nigeria are among the leading African countries that, Kenya, Nairobi has one of the biggest Silicon Valley, and also Mathare has such a big sustainability valley already in practice.
Yeah, very
So
true.
very happy to participate. Please stay in touch with us, Odyssey, because we need to create a youth movement in Africa. Thank you so much. Asante, asante.
Karibu sana. Asante.
So, Heiner, you have the floor.
Thank you. Well, maybe I say why I'm working with Jörg on Youth for Planet, because he's doing film competitions and we need to be all in between filmmakers to convey the bigger picture, like the broader comments, like Cathini was saying, because, and she mentioned lenses, which lenses? Where are the lenses? So we can learn a lot about this creative aspects. I was presenting in my 3 minutes the role of youth, what we can learn from past experiences. We started 20 years ago, positive news, youth views in the UN, in 5 languages. The youth later called themselves youth leaders, but they were marginalized. So calling to give the power to the youth and to the women, I know since 30 and even more years. So that is nothing new. What can we make to make a difference? Jörg was making films, I think in the late 90s, with youth travel to Mongolia, Antarctica, wherever, to see the change, but they didn't embody the change. That's why, and I was with Greta 4 years at the COP in Katowice, and in between many times, and now in Stockholm 1 or 2 months ago, they are crying desperately. And they need what Mahendra said, maybe some mentoring. But that needs to step back to see what it is about, to be really in like a filmmaker in scenography, creating spaces and connecting the spaces and connecting the level. This and everything else I try to present too short in 3 minutes. Maybe it needs more time. You cannot put all this in a nutshell, but I tell you, there is experience to really add overview and orientation. Otherwise, through the information glut, we get into overclaims and oversimplifications and fake realities. So over to Jörg.
Just a moment. I want to give it to Yuri because it's 1 hour, 1.5 hours, and I think we need to bring to a close. And let's give the final word to any of the youth who wants to say just a couple of sentences. Anybody of the youth that wishes to speak before I give it to Jörg and Yuri to close the session. Omlawa, you came the last. You can have a word.
Thank you for giving me another opportunity. What I can maybe try to add on what I said earlier is that I think youth needs to be protected also on this issue, because when we look at this platform, it is a worldwide thing, but we see we have a very limited number of youths participating. Why is it so? It's because these people are not encouraged to do so. And here in Nairobi, Kenya, for example, youths are so very much creative. And I think with the beginning of this platform, we can now plan more engagements for the future. It's just a start. And I believe when we roll out our strategies and put them in the right way, I know with time we are going to solve these things because we cannot avoid it. Even if some of the dangers or some of the benefits of this climate change not befall on us, we have siblings, we have families who will either benefit from the same. So my take on it is let's come up with a clear record for the future engagements, and let's thank you. Let me adjust my voice. I'm being told that my voice is so down. What I'm trying to say is I advocate that the youth may be protected. And anytime we come across such gathering and sittings, let's equally maybe get certificates of participants so that we see how serious this thing is running for the future engagement. And we have, I believe in all of us, we have a law that we can offer, and together we can change the world we live in. Thank you.
Thank you. I have sent you my email in exchange for yours. So please look at the chat and you can copy it down. So, Helena, do you wish the last word?
Sure. Thanks again for letting me speak, because as I said, mostly we don't get this chance. And I was just going to say, I don't know about the political situation in most of the countries here, but I just feel that much of the things that need to be done now is definitely connected to education, creating a new system that is more student focused, student oriented. So we are not only like observing content and knowledge, but we are also sharing and communicating about what is bothering us and what we've been noting so far, that we can make a change. And also definitely making more accessible for the youth to talk to their local government, to politicians. Brazil is not open at all to this kind of conversations. It's very difficult for me to maybe like talk to a young person, and that this young person had the opportunity to talk to a person in Congress or any politician in general. So definitely that open channels that I've talked are really important. But also I feel I shared in the chat this project that is happening, that is kind of like this innovation valley in the Amazon forest. And I wish more young people had the opportunity to be part of this, because entrepreneurship, like social entrepreneurship, it's very important to start early, and that we create the jobs as Kishini said. So I think,
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Helena. David, you have the floor. 1 minute, please.
Thank you very much. Actually, what we have seen that most of the youth and initiatives are working in silos. But if we come up, for example, from Africa, if we come up with one strong voice and we have a platform or a marketplace where everyone can put his idea, his initiative, the campaign they are conducting, so that we can have one strong voice. At least we can come up with a bigger voice, impact, and also everyone can feel that what we are doing is a great job. But what are the concern and the issues which have been around is that everyone is doing his separate work and reporting independently. And some of us in Africa, most of them don't document what they are doing, but they're doing some tremendous work. But if we come up with the voice which I've talked, which may be a platform, it can be a digital platform which can converge all the youth from South America, Europe, Africa, just in a click. You can find that David in Uganda is doing this activity, one in Brazil doing this activity. This can enable implementation and writing of policy, because everyone, even if a political person be in parliament, you'll have where to benchmark from, we have where to get the notes from that check youth in Africa saying this, South America, they are saying this. So we need to act and also have our environment protected. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, excellent suggestion. We need a global network of youth originating from the 80% of the world that is developing, not just from the north. This is really an urgent thing to do to Brazil, to Africa, to Asia, to South America, and North. So it's very important to do that. Armahini, are you still there? 30 seconds you have.
Okay. Well, I
30
completely agree with this networking in the global context. And that's what I have been trying to do in last few years. I try to connect the community that I work with one to another, to share the knowledge and experience. And I think this is very important, and also to get to learn, each other, because I've been working with various communities with various faith and cultural background. And I understand this is what is actually needed. Otherwise, someone mentioned earlier about divide and rule politics, and this can always be implemented by those who are obsessed with power and money. So this is a way to protect ourselves as well. Build the network. Thank you.
Thank you. Kashini, are you there? She may be busy. Here she.
Yeah, but my camera's gone.
This idea of a global network of youths, starting the idea in the developing world and spreading it to 80% of the world. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's, it is what's required. I think just taking the time to define what that looks like will be important, right? So when we say global network, apart from sort of linkages and connections, what else does this sort of mean? Is that
okay?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I am going to hand over to Yuri and York to close the session, please.
Mhm.
Yuri?
Okay, from my side, just say thank you very much, everybody. I mean, it's been great. We have very good material here for what we're going to do. The next stage is to get all the messages that have been collected over this past 4. There will be another one webinar Thursday, and to transform that in a movie that we can share and help to make this network, make connections even better. So thank you very much for everybody. And we have, yes, everyone of us involve more youth into this fight, because at the end of the day, they're going to inherit the plant, right? We want to be here, and we need to prepare it for the next generation. So thank you very much.
York, the final word.
Well, we are actively working on this network. I think Kashini is right. It needs to be defined what this is. I think it's not just the young people. It should be integrated, it should be intergenerational, and it should be local, so that it really has something to say about something that people actively support, that they know about. And once you have this local thing, and then you connect the local to the global, then we are there. And we have the abilities and the technology to do that by connecting the local initiatives and ingenuity, which is there. And so this is probably the next step. And I'm very hopeful that we will have achieved this in maybe 10 years' time. Because it's already growing, people see the need for it, and we need all these good ideas, and especially the good news about activities that succeed. So let's have more of that.
Thank you. I fully agree that local initiatives and then connect to global, but please, it must happen simultaneously, because the power base of this world is in the global arena. So while the local initiatives are done, you need to connect to the global. You need to connect to the United Nations, which is the only forum we have. Let's not downplay the UN. That's the if the UN is dead tomorrow, we have to reinvent the World Bank and all these high-level institutions, and the youth need to, with the local initiatives, need to connect. So thank
That's why
you.
we work on this global level. That's why we are here,
No,
and
no,
that's why
we need the local
we go
initiative,
to.
not just you. We need the local initiatives around the world to connect with the global. So don't stay in Kenya with your local things or in Uganda with this. It's important that you find that channels to connect with the global institution. And often my own experiences of growing in Kenya, it's very hard for me in Kenya to connect with the World Bank. It's very easy for me as a youth to connect with the World Bank in Washington. These are the realities that we face. So thank you everyone for this wonderful discussion. We were small in number, but wealthy in ideas, and really ideas from the youth, especially from the 3 continents, 4 continents, that are so relevant. And I think we should build on this. We didn't have anyone from Europe as a youth on this webinar, would have been useful, but, and the United States, of course, North America. But it's been a very mind-opening and I think some excellent ideas, Yuri, to incorporate. Thank you so much, everyone.
Okay.
Yuri, I would like
Thank
to
you.
talk to you later, so we connect for a moment. Yuri?
Okay. And
Yes.
please download the chat, because then you have the phone numbers of all of the different people that posted it there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. Everybody wants to stay on. Obviously, we have a lot to discuss, but let's call it a day now, because 1.5 hours of recording, and then Yuri and Jorg have a lot to process.